As Nigeria moves to ramp up its COVID-19 vaccination rollout, the government on Wednesday issued a vaccine mandate for federal workers. It said starting from December 1, workers who do not show proof of vaccination and/or a negative COVID-19 test result will be barred from federal offices. The federal government will be joining the likes of Edo State, which imposes similar vaccine mandate in the southern state. However, the mandate in Edo has encountered stiff opposition from civil society and the Nigeria Labour Congress. Joining us now to discuss the COVID-19 vaccine mandate for federal workers and what this will mean for civil liberties and public servants who, for personal reasons, want to abstain from getting vaccinated is Isa Aremu, who will also discuss labor disputes and the threat to the 2022 Appropriation Act. Aremu is a trade union activist and labor leader. He is also the Director General of the Labour Institute and of the Michael Emodu National Institute for Labour Studies. Good morning, Comrade Aremu, and thank you for joining us. Comrade, you've been missing in action. So for you, this must be a lost and found encounter on the morning show. But in any case.
Well, but I'm happy that Comrade Ruben has already been in action, representing all of us.
Anyway.
My comrade sisters who are with you there.
Good morning,
It's good to see you.
Funny, and it's a pleasure to see all of you once again after a long time. I think this is my first time I'm talking to you since I became the Director General.
Yes.
The Comrade General of the...
Since you joined them.
Michael Emodu Labour.
Anyway, congratulations. It's good to see you. Quickly. Okay, the intro started with, the vaccine mandate that has been issued by the federal government of Nigeria with regard to vaccination and how federal workers would not be allowed to access federal offices with effect from December 1 if they are not vaccinated. What do you think of that? The Association of Senior Civil Servants, they have said they have no problems, but they think the deadline should be more flexible. The Nigerian Civil Service Union also says, well, we're in support, but can you make it more flexible and make the vaccines available so that there will be no tension created as a result of this vaccine mandate? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ruben. I think first is to acknowledge the fact that the virus is still very much around. And secondly, to also be able to note that there has been comprehensive response on the part of Nigerian government at all levels to manage this pandemic. And if you go on memory lane, we first had the first outbreak when that Italian who flew into Lagos. I think that should be February 2020. That was last year. And since then, there has been a quick response on the part of the government, aimed at containment of this virus. And I think on the whole, Ruben, you agree with me that I think there is a consensus that Africa, especially Nigeria, has managed this pandemic better. I look at the figure of this morning. The death rate, even though it's quite significant, but less than 30,000, contrary to all the predictions, that the whole street of the continent of Africa will be littered with dead bodies. So I raise this point because I think we should acknowledge the fact that the responses have been very dramatic, very, very, robust, very, very inclusive, such that we've been able to curtail this pandemic. And I want to also salute the media. I want to appreciate the media. And Arise, you've done very well to promote literacy about this pandemic, including what we are doing now. So maybe this latest response is part of the continuation of the government response. We have the Presidential Task Force, which used to give daily briefings. I think that was also set up by President Buhari very early when we had this pandemic. And they've really done very well under the leadership of the Secretary to the Federal Government, Boss Mustafa. So I think if you ask me, as you have asked me, I think no response will be too much to save lives under this pandemic. And I want to share the views of the Senior Staff Association of civil servants, senior civil servants, who have also said they have no problem with this directive. We have enough notice, December 1st. But the only thing I will say, and I want to add, is that we can do more with more sensitization. Since I became the, I think to use your word, I've joined the other side and I have to manage human resources, Ruben. I was also shocked that such a big institute, important institute like mine, some well-enlightened people who should be trainers. Some of them are still skeptical about having the vaccine, and I have to really tell them to say, wait, this virus is real. Some unionists have died. I've lost very good comrades of mine who died, as a result of COVID. Not just in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Tanzania. Of course, it doesn't have to be high profile. Deaths are deaths. We know we've recorded, from the figure now, about 2,715 deaths have been recorded. These are all our relations, brothers and sisters. I don't want us to be part of these statistics. So any measure we take will be very, very useful. And as a DG, I've also said so. We must make sure all our members are duly vaccinated. And but one thing that I've tried to do here, which I want to recommend to all the government agencies, that they should carry the workers along through their unions. The beauty of this country is that we have freedom of association, freedom to organize. We have very robust trade union movement. Nigeria Labour Congress, close to about 8 million members. TUC, about 3 million members. I think I would want the presidential task force to engage with them so that they carry the campaign out. And all of us have to put hands together. The key word is partnership, so that we can curtail the spread of this pandemic. So I'm happy that there are rapid centers that have been set up now. Quick centers that will promote vaccinations at all levels. But above all, it's even to break the myth, the so-called false consciousness that this COVID is not real. I think we need to do more enlightenment, more campaign. As an institute, we've raised proposal to the PTF to make sure that we have massive educational programs, so that we can be able to, prevention, as they say, is better than the cure. And I think Nigeria has done very well. I'm happy now that we've lifted some restrictions on some countries. Even UK has acknowledged the fact that we can move freely now to come to UK. It's because of this robust response we put in place. So we can't say we are going to be free in UK or in America when we are not free in our country. So I think the Edo government has set the place, and I commended Governor Obaseki that time to say that, well, you cannot work if you are not alive. And many people will not be alive if you are eager in an attempt to exercise your rights, you infect other people. So I think on the COVID issue, we need to build consensus along that line. But I also know that, like any other thing, over the years, even when you look at the name, when we are talking of identity card, government has a way of being flexible. So maybe December 1st may not be sacrosanct. But Ruben, something tells me that for every day we don't take our vaccine, we're at risk. And you also know that even after having this vaccine, it doesn't mean that one cannot be infected. That's why they say maintain social distancing. We need to use our mask, and of course, all the other protocols that we need to follow. So I think that what is worth doing is worth doing well. But I think we need more engagement, more to carry everybody along, all the stakeholders, so that we can achieve the December 1st deadline. And my institute is very open to assist all the stakeholders in this respect.
On that note, sir, we'll take a short break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still with Issa Aremu, DG of Michael Imodu Labour Organization. You've expressed some misgivings as you complimented President Buhari on the swift presentation of the 2022 Appropriation Act to the National Assembly. You commended him on that. But you're expressing some misgivings about the possibility of industrial action that could hamper the implementation of the budget. Please, could you expand on that?
Well, first is, let me repeat. Well, I think it's self-explained now that I'm the DG of an institute, not an organization. Tundu, I'm very sure you are clear about that.
National Institute. I do beg your pardon, not organization.
Yeah, for labor studies. Yeah, that's fine. Now, on the issue of the budget, I think I agree with you that this budget, for me, it's significant because the theme is economic growth and sustainability. And I think possibly the highest budget that we're having in recent times, 16.39 trillion naira. And there are clear-cut, parameters that have been put in place. $57 per barrel, close to about 1.7 million barrels we intend to, to produce. And of course, some clear-cut targets about how much you are devoting to capital expenditure, to recurrent expenditure, some significant allocation to education too, even though we can do more, to health too, more so as part of the drive to get out of the pandemic. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Hello?
Loud and clear, sir.
Yeah, oh, that's fine. So, yeah, so these are very good clear-cut economic indicators, which are significant for recovery of Nigeria. And I also find it very ambitious because it said 4.2 growth rate percentage. And that's quite bold because most European countries, they are far less than 1.8, 1.2, where COVID has done more devastation. So it's an ambitious budget, which I've actually commended, and also acknowledge the fact that President Buhari has maintained what I call budget punctuality. I mean, this is the first time in history we are presenting a budget October 8th. I think if we continue this way, we can plan. Now, but the point I had, which you acknowledge, is that all these parameters can only work if we address the soft issues. And the soft issue, the main soft issue, if you ask me, is the human resources that will drive this agenda. So you are going to produce close to about 1.5 million barrels. That's to the extent that the petroleum sector is stable. You address the concern of petroleum workers, whether it's Pengassan or Snowpeng. You also make sure that you motivate them for productivity. Otherwise, if there's any problem, they are going to be destructive. You have put in a lot of money to head, but that's based on the fact that we are not going to have another piece of the graveyard. Or, I don't know, really. The doctors just finished their strike. The National Association of Resident Doctors, 64 days in a pandemic. Even as a former labor leader, I mean, for me, that beats imagination. In a pandemic in which those who are supposed to help us of you, for whatever reason, and the reason, some of them were said to not be paid, they didn't respect the agreement, they went on strike. So my advice is that we need to, again, return back to partnership. And I think it's time for us to make sure we address those critical labor market issues that will make us to have stable industrial relation environment. We don't have unnecessary work stoppages, avoidable strikes, avoidable lockouts on the part of some employers. And how can this be done? Again, this is what our institute is meant to drive. We need to build capacity for government at all levels, for workers at all levels, for employers, so that they know the process of collective bargaining. You don't go into an agreement that you cannot respect. You don't do sweetheart agreement, which will not be sustainable. You can also have the best of agreement. You can have reopener clause. Reopener clause means that if things change, you can revisit them so that, you don't need a necessary strike, for you to enforce an agreement. Then, if there are settled issues like issue of rights, any worker that works is entitled to his or her pay. You don't need to hold salary of workers, for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, And I think this is where President Buhari has offered leadership. I've been saying so President Buhari has been consistent about the need to pay federal workers as I went due. And I want all the relevant agencies of the federal government or ministry to follow suit. So we don't delay payment of doctors, as the case may be. But let me round up to say, even with the best of efforts, there will always be conflict at work. There will always be conflict. Even the mouth, as they say in Yoruba, the mouth and tongue will fight. And at times they fight when they don't need to fight, when you are hungry. One is competing to quickly have the good food. So it's the same thing in the world of work. With the best of effort, there will be conflict between management, workers. There will be problem between employers and employees. There will be problem between even employees and employees. The solution is that, please, let's resolve it through dialogue, through social dialogue compromises. You don't resolve it by endless acrimony in which you lock out workers and also workers who go on indefinite strikes. I mean, the way strikes have become so, strike is supposed to be last weapon. I think increasingly now, that weapon for me is increasingly being abused. Because a strike that lasts for 64 days, with that result, that tells you that weapon needs to be relooked again. I've been a general secretary of a trade union. You know very well, National Union of Textile and Garment Workers Union. And this is a union that is made up of blue-collar workers. It's also labor-intensive. what it takes to take care of hundreds of thousands of workers. This sector, you won't believe it, and I can reveal it to you today, we've done close to 48 national collective agreements. No single shutdown of the entire industry. We look for different methods. We sparingly use SWAG weapon on an industry-wide basis. Maybe occasionally some few reconsider an employer we can isolate for pressure, but not that it shut down the industry. In any case, this industry that is already down. So additional endless strike, we rather kill the enterprise. I think we need that principle also for the public sectors. You go on strike for 1 day, 2 days, for 9 months, and at the end of the day, what is the result? And I think all I want to say here is that it's not to do any blame game. The burden is on the employers. When you have agreement, please kindly respect the agreement. If for whatever reason you cannot fulfill the content of the agreement, have a reopener clause. Engage the workers. When the workers ask for meeting, they write letter, we should acknowledge simple things. So we need to dignify the workforce so that we avoid this total meltdown. So what I'm trying to say is that this good budget, which has been put on the table, can only be implemented if soft issues are handled, which is the workforce. And as an institute, again, we intend to partner so that we can improve communication among all the stakeholders on the economy. And even on the economy, as I've been so upbeat on this budget, that this is the highest budget. It translates to why $89 per capita. We are still one of the poorest countries in terms of budgeting. South Africa budget per capita for this year is about close to $2,500. And with less population, but we have more population, 200 million. You have a budget of 16 trillion, which is still the biggest. So we need to be more ambitious. And to do so means that we need to be more productive. We can avoid unnecessary work stoppages. We need to invest more in productivity. We're already done in terms of impact of banditry, which has granted some part of the rural areas. We can't afford this also in the world of work. So what I'm trying to say is that I think time for us to have a way to work together to realize the objective of this budget without unnecessary assumptions.
We have just about 3 minutes to go. So, just 3 minutes to wrap up this segment of the program. But I was going to ask you, you talked about crisis of compensation. You talked about, partnering with government, both at the national and the subnational level, to address a number of issues. Well, how, for example, can the Michael Imodu Institute for Labor Studies partner with government to ensure that those subnationals that have refused to implement the National Minimum Wage Act do so? And then in some of the comments you made at a recent workshop, virtual workshop, held in Ilorin, you talked about funding for labor market institutions like yours. Was that a direct way of saying that the institute that you had is underfunded?
Yeah, let me take the last question, Ruben. I mean, most MDAs are generally could be better funded. Let me put it that way. Including the Michael Imodu Labour Institute. I mean, we are going to take care of formal and informal sector workers. The entire workforce of this country is about 70 million. You know, this is the largest workforce concentration in Africa. And now, our budget, what is it all about? You know, we could make do with money, more budgeting. You have the National Productivity Center, which is also labor market institution. It's about productivity. You have the Industrial Training Fund. They need to be motivated. You have the National Director of Employment. But the one that concerns me is the Labour Institute. And Michael Imodu Labour Institute, you realize, was established in 1983. You know, it's just like we have ASCON in Badagry, we have CMD to take care of manager. The idea of Labour Institute is to build capacity on labor market issues. And I think this is where I say we can be available to partner with government in this respect. I also said so, we have crisis of compensation. If you look at most of the crises we have at work, it's about pay, you know, and I think it's important that we all stick together as stakeholders, that in the condition of stable macroeconomic environment, high inflation, devaluation of currency, what would be the better approach to protect the real wage? And that's why I'm happy federal government, President Buhari reassured recently that there's no attempt to devalue Naira further, because devaluation means you erode the pay of the workforce. At the time, you cannot actually increase wages. Again, we need to promote conversation along this line. I'm quite excited, Ruben, that you've been following some of the remarks I've been making. I think the whole idea is to promote industrial peace side by side with industrial justice, so that we minimize the unnecessary conflict. I mean, what would make doctors to go and say they want to go and work in Saudi Arabia? Ruben, I'm an allergy, but I can say here, with all due respect, Nigeria has more laws that guarantee freedom of association than Saudi Arabia. These doctors who went on strike, if they are in Saudi, they can't go on that strike. They can't even have unions, you know, but they are attracted by issue of pay, but they don't look at the condition under which we are. Rather than them to leave Nigeria, let's work together collectively so that they will see how we can motivate and compensate the workforce very well. And I think the president have led in this example. He signed the Minimum Wage into Act. It's a law. In fact, no government is allowed to not to implement. I mean, every government is supposed to implement that law. Not to do so, according to the Act, is illegal. In fact, there are sanctions that are imposed in it. So in that case, workers in those states who are fighting for implementation of minimum wage, backed up by the Act of Parliament, they are doing the right thing. And I think let me call on the governors, all governors, to know that they are not just employers of labor. They are to enforce the laws. Because there are private sector employers who may not obey the law, but governors cannot enforce it if they too have not enforced it. And what is this minimum wage you are talking about? As at the time it was signed, it was just about $60 per month. Today, it has nosedive further due to the impact of devaluation. But as an institute, we are supposed to provide a framework for genuine conversation so that we address what I call crisis of compensation. We also make sure that we revisit the issue of collective action. There are two kinds of disputes. Dispute of right is different from dispute of interest. You don't go on indefinite strike for new things that you are looking for. Of course, you don't need any negotiation to down tools if nobody pays you. That's dispute of right. Again, these are issues that need capacity building, and this is what this institute has been set up to do. But the institute will not do better if it's not well resourced, not well funded. And let me use the opportunity to appreciate the federal government for deeming it fit to appoint me as the first unionist to head this institute, even though it's named after our founding grandfather, Chief Michael Imodu. You know him very well. He led the first struggle, to fight for workers, decent work in railway corporation under the British colonial rule. That was in the 40s. He was also a strong member of NCNC. He was a strong nationalist who fought for independence. The bottom line is that Imodu stood for decent work. And I think today he must have been excited we have an institute named after him, but the institute must deliver to make sure that we prevent unnecessary crises arising from basic rights that we need to enforce. And I think federal government, as I said, set example. All the other agencies must follow. State government must also do so. And of course, private sector employers should do so. Nigerian growth can only be guaranteed if there is consistent productivity.
On
I
that
think
note,
let me wrap up. On
yes, well, thank you very much, Comrade Issa Aremu, for joining us this morning on the morning show. And we wish you all the best with the Institute. Thank you very much.